Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now today for this week we're going to be bringing you the second deck list for my countdown to the crown of sorts, as Worlds is going to be this weekend for Final Fantasy TCG, and I wanted to bring you guys a variety of deck lists that maybe we'll see at Worlds, maybe we won't, things similar, things completely different, who knows. But I want to give you guys some inspiration, things that you could be playing in the upcoming meta, and today we're going to be talking about the changes that are going to be brought around to Mono Lightning. Now I think Mono Lightning has been up and down since Opus 2 as a very, very strong deck, and I think that there's some additions that Opus 7 brings to it that are really cool, and I really wanted to show those to you. But before I go into the deck list, don't forget to check out all of my social links in the description box below, including my Patreon, where you can get access to all of my videos earlier than everybody else, and a load of other bonuses as well, and also my Discord chat, which you're more than welcome to come and join us and chat with everybody, and we've got a really lovely little community growing, and I'd love to see it grow more so I can spend time with all you guys when I'm not filming, obviously. Anyways, without further ado, let's just get straight into our Mono Lightning Ride the Lightning deck. Now before I go into the deck that I've built here, which you can see on the right hand side here, there's a couple of cards here that aren't in this deck that I quickly wanted to touch on, because there's a lot of really nice cards that are available to Lightning now. I've even seen decks using Gilgamesh in a reinvention of the Opus 1 Gilgamesh deck, which was a combination of Opus 1 Golbez and Gilgamesh. And now that Gilgamesh is kind of a target for that Golbez, you know, with the new one, it could be a reinvention of that deck, which is really cool. But I also wanted to touch on cards like Seymour, which obviously has very good synergies with the EX burst heavy nature of Lightning, and we also have cards like Cid Previa, which I'm obviously running Cid Previa already, but I actually quite like Mid as well. I think there's quite a lot to be said for her. And then, you know, we also have cards like Noel, which I've discussed in my previous video, which is a more FF13 for the themed deck, which I'll leave a link to in the description box below, and it's actually quite a good card in and of itself. But enough about the cards that aren't in this deck, let's talk about the ones that are. So we've got the Al-Cid combo in here, as most you know, Lightning decks do. So we've got Rigdia, but there's so many targets in here, it's really nice. You've got Rigdia, Zapt, Hildebrand, Illawa, Onion Knight, and Joesephyr, all of which are Al-Cid targets, which is fantastic, and some of them are advantage generators, some of them are just beat sticks, some of them obviously compound the damage that's dealt by Al-Cid. Now Zapt is a new card that I really wanted to touch on because I think the card is incredible. I talked about this in my Opus 7 early review video, but honestly I think this card is incredible. Purely because your opponent never wants to run into it. If you attack with Zapt, or block with him, then you can just search up Ramuh and then cast the Ramuh immediately to finish it off. Or if you've got other means of finishing it off, you could just save the Ramuh for later. I think that honestly Zapt is one of the best cards in Opus 7, and it's, you know, I don't think it's flown under the radar. I think a lot of people know how good it is, but honestly, if you haven't checked this card out, go and run it. It's really good. It was also cheap as chips for Zemus to bring back, and everyone knows how much I like that card. Hildebrand I think is actually very strong right now, because one of the things that Lightning tends to lack is a decent beat stick. So we've got some of them, like we've got Estinien in here, but we've also got, you know, but again, like most of it is reliant on damage. You don't have a lot of big forwards, and the combination of Hildebrand and Nashu are honestly some of the best value forwards you can get. If you have a Nashu out, which is a turn 1 play, it's a 2 CP backup, you can have access to a 9k haste 3-drop, which is really scary, and one that's difficult to remove as well, because if you target it with anything, it just bounces back to your hand. So Fasoya's not going to do a lot to it, and you know, there's a lot of things, or you know, opposing Lightning decks aren't going to do an awful lot to it. So honestly, I just think the card's very strong right now, and that's why I wanted to include it. Illawa, we all know how good she is. She's hard to get rid of. Her S ability is phenomenal. She's just a pain in the butt. And then, you know, Joesephyr or Cypher, I can never pronounce it correctly. I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly or not. Sound off in the comments below. Can you just tell me if it's Joesephyr or Cypher? Because I want to make sure I get it right for the future videos. Honestly, I think the combination of him in the 2 Edeas is honestly some of the best plays that Lightning has to offer. And, you know, half of them are on EX bursts. One of the Edeas is an EX burst, and the Joesephyr, I'm going to call him Joesephyr because it's going to wind me up. The Joesephyr is an EX burst as well. So honestly, you just get so much value out of the pair of them, and you know, Al-Cid Joesephyr is essentially getting 2 forwards for practically nothing. It's really good. And you can also search for the one that you need as and when you need it. So if you've got Edea, the backup Edea out already, but you don't have a forward one in the break zone, you can just pick one up and then just bin it for something else. And you know, combat tricks I've seen people do with with Joesephyr and Edea are fantastic. There's a lot of interactions that people can use with this card, and it's really, really good. Amon I like, it's just solid. It's just a very, very solid card. It wards off aggro, it pushes things forward, it's just very, very good. And you know, anything that you couldn't remove that's active through Cid or any of the stuff like that, you can just get out of the way with Amon. Zemus, we all know how much I like that card. It's just very, very strong. If it's not dealt with immediately, it just racks up the board so fast, and with things like Zapt and Hildebrand, your value off of this card just becomes so big. I actually would like to run 3 of this card because the chances are he's not going to last because your opponent's going to want him dead quickly. So honestly, I would even consider running 3 of him, but because there's no, you know, there's nothing you can really do with him outside of his effect, I think 2 is still fine. Estinien is another card that I'd actually like to run a second copy of because he's massive, he's threatening. You know, the second you get your 5 backups out, which this deck is very, like, the way I've built this deck, it's very much get 5 backups out as soon as you physically can for the sake of things like Edea and Estinien, and Zemus's value. You can just rack up plays and damage with Estinien so quickly, and I really, really enjoy the fact that he can just, like, nothing can stand in his way. He's just an end game play. I like him at 1 or 2. I'd never run 3 personally, but honest, if you wanted to, you could drop a backup for a second Estinien quite happily if you wanted to. And then Edea, again, I've spoken about it when I spoke about Joesephyr. Edea is just very, very good. There's no reason not to run her in Mono Lightning. But I touched on Noel earlier, and I said this in my video yesterday. I think that Noel is quite an underrated pick because Edea, you know, is a 6 CP forward that comes in and kills something, and Noel does the same thing in a just slightly different way and without the EX burst. So there are arguments to be had here to run Noel as well as Edea, but I wanted to keep the value costs in this deck as low as possible, so I decided not to. Speaking of high costing cards, going into the backups, one of the cards I wanted to talk about, and a card I again would love to run a second copy of, but I just can't fit it in, is Cid Previa. Now, Cid's really, really good at racking up value really quickly, and even though he doesn't look like he does. And the reason that I've decided to run Louis Soir and Alphinaud in here is because I spoke earlier and I mentioned the fact that this deck is all about getting 5 backups as quickly as possible. If you get a turn 1, Louis Soir and Cid Previa in your hand, which there's only 1 copy of each in this deck, so it's not likely, that you can discard Louis Soir as part of the cost for Cid, pull the Louis Soir back and grab Alphinaud and then play it straight away afterwards. It's like you've got 3 backups out turn 1 and you haven't lost as much as you should have. It's actually really, really powerful. But not only that, but Cid can bring back things like Lulu, which is useful to have if you've had to discard her early. And then you've got Gramis and Cid of Clan Gully as well, which are both searches, so you're still getting more value out of them. I just really like Louis Soir in particular because I like the idea of just slapping down backups as soon as you can. You don't even have to play the Alphinaud turn 1, like straight away turn 1. You have 2 backups out, you can play it for free on the second turn. It's really, really good, and I really like Cid Previa. I think it's really interesting. Alphinaud is mostly just to like trigger the extra damage. You're not going to be able to get the extra damage of it because we don't have any other Scions in the deck, but it's there to be searched for by Louis Soir because getting 5 backups out is so important. Nashu, obviously there to power up Hildebrand. Red Mage, because it's just very, very strong and giving haste to things that don't already have it, like Amon, is very, very good. Scholar, I mentioned this in my video yesterday with Ice Lightning. I think that being able to just pretty much just outright kill a unboosted Layla and Viking at the same time is very, very useful. And then Lulu is obviously just there as a power booster, and then Edea is part of the combination of Joesephyr and the twin Edeas. So honestly, the backups all kind of write themselves, but there are a lot of really good backups that I haven't put into this deck that you could choose to do differently. You might not want to run like the Cid Previa, Louis Soir and Alphinaud set, whereas I quite like it. So there's plenty of other options that you have available instead of those. While there are a lot of lightning monsters I actually really like, I haven't decided to run any in this deck because I wanted to just kind of focus on the forward portion. I wanted lots of forwards in there, but I do actually really like Quirl. I think the Quirl is best suited to a Scion deck though, so I think that having that in that deck is better than having it in a mono lightning deck. That being said, the card is still very good as it gets rid of things like Liak, which can be a real pain if you don't deal with them quickly. However, the summons have capabilities of dealing with monsters as well, so I don't think we need it here. We have Ramuh, who honestly, as a zapped target, is the only zapped target, is just a strong card. It's monster hate, it can kill things, it can give haste, it can dull things. It's just good. There's no reason not to run this card. Exodus is in here purely for Camlanaught's sake, because Camlanaught can be a real issue for any mono-coloured deck, and I really wanted to kind of... I haven't put a light or dark card in here yet, and because I couldn't really figure out which one I wanted to put in. Yuri would be a very, very good pick for here. I just couldn't figure out what to take out for him, because I think Yuri having the capabilities of dulling and freezing Kamlanor, or making him so he loses his abilities, would be really, really good. I actually would encourage the use of Yuri. I just couldn't figure out what to take out for him. So if you guys can figure out what to take out for Yuri, then by all means put him in. And then the other Ramuh in here I put in as an extra zapped target, and as an EX burst it actually can kill quite a lot, and there aren't many cards, or there aren't any cards in the game that can drop power as much as this Ramuh can, except for say Cloud of Darkness after you've built a massive board. So having that on a summon is quite nice. And then Odin, I think that I don't ordinarily like running triple Odin on its own, but because you have Ramuh and Edea as well, there are enough times where you're gonna trigger an EX burst that kills something that I actually quite like him in here. So Mono Lightning still plays basically the same as it always has. It's just had some of its nuances changed. So I think that obviously the idea is to get the backups out as quickly as you can for Edea's sake, so you want her to be live as soon as you possibly can, and then being able to crack Estinien on the go is pretty nice as well. And obviously having the value to be able to play everything else you play without having to discard cards, because there's no draw power realistically in Lightning, except for the search cards like Zapt, Cid of Clan Gully and Gramis. So you just need to keep your hand up as much as you can, and I think that the reason that I go on about Zima so much is because you don't have to so much with him, because you can still play things, and because your break zone is probably quite large by the time you've got him out, you have a plethora of options of things that you can pull back with him. I really, really like the idea, you know, using Hildebrand as a beta, you know, because it means you've got a 9k guy that's for 3 CP just constantly attacking your opponent. It's really, really useful, and I just think that it's just a really heavy, aggro-y, rushy deck, and I think if you like that kind of deck, then Mono Lightning is probably the best place for you to go at the moment. That's going to be it for this video, so thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned and for the rest of the week for 3 more deck lists on the countdown to Worlds, and then don't forget to stay tuned for Worlds at this weekend, because I will be casting it with a friend of mine that I'm sure will be very recognisable to a lot of you, or those of you in the community at least, and we're going to be seeing a lot of really, really good decks and some really interesting plays, so definitely go and check out Square Enix's official Twitch channel if you want to come and watch that this weekend. Anyways, that's going to be it from me, so thanks again for watching, and I'll speak to you guys soon. See you later.